The Economic Times, 13th of February 2024, pushes the boundaries China's frontier expansion. China, which lies and has waged war against all of its neighbors, is currently encroaching on the land of all of its neighbors, no matter how large or small. Late in 2021, Chairman Xi Jinping reportedly told President Joe Biden in Beijing, "Hegemony and aggression do not run in the Chinese national veins." China has not initiated any warfare or conflict since the inception of the People's Republic and has not annexed even an inch of territory from other nations. Nonetheless, given China's heedless expansion of its land and sea boundaries, such a claim is manifestly unfounded. Along their shared rugged, mountainous frontier, including Bhutan and India, China is advancing to establish a fait accompli on the ground. It is endeavoring to develop illegitimate territorial claims in the South China Sea and the Senkaku Islands, which are located in Japan. Near the Indian frontier, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, in the United States evaluated the People's Liberation Army's, PLA, newly constructed infrastructure. The report noted that China is currently undertaking a major expansion of its infrastructure that is enhancing its ability to project military power along its western frontier in both Xinjiang and Tibet. According to a report by Xi's, China is constructing or upgrading dozens of airports and heliports. These facilities are supplemented by new roads, rail, and other infrastructure that improve PLA logistics by enabling the transportation of more significant quantities of soldiers, weapons, and supplies closer to the frontier. According to it, the pace of development in the region accelerated following standoffs and skirmishes between China and India along disputed portions of their border in 2017 and 2020. The Doklam Plateau, where PLA engineers attempted to construct a road, is referenced in 2017. An even more severe incident occurred in 2020 when violent unrest erupted in Galwan Valley, located in eastern Ladakh. In Tibet and Xinjiang's challenging and unforgiving high-altitude regions, the significance of airports and heliports increases exponentially. In addition to facilitating the movement of personnel and equipment into the area, they may also function as launch platforms for reconnaissance assets or strike missions. The air power buildup occurring on China's western frontier is expansive in scope, Xi's concluded. China Power has examined open-source data and satellite imagery to identify 37 airports and heliports in Tibet and Xinjiang that have undergone construction or renovation activities since 2017. At least 22 of these are identifiable as dual-use or military facilities or are anticipated to be so upon completion. In 2020, this activity progressed at an exceptionally rapid rate. China initiated the construction of 7 new air facilities and enhancements at 7 others that year. The majority of construction is taking place in Tibet. Since 2017, new runways, hangars, aprons, and terminals have been added to all 5 extant dual-use airports, and 4 additional airports have been built within 60 kilometers of the Indian border. For instance, Lhansi, Angari Brang, and Shigatse Tingri airports address conspicuous deficiencies in the PLA's coverage. The closest dual-purpose airport to Doklam is the Shigatse Peace Airport, which has been upgraded with a substantial underground structure featuring a minimum of 3 entrances. The PLA is also substantially enhancing its capacity to conduct helicopter-based operations in Tibet by upgrading 2 heliports and constructing at least 5 additional heliports, Xi's continued. Deployed by aviation divisions of China's People's Liberation Army, these heliports dot Tibet, extending from Ningxi City in the east to Rutag County in the west. The implementation of these heliports has the potential to improve PLA operations in the mountainous area significantly, given the unique maneuverability of helicopters, distinguishing them from ground equipment and aircraft. Since 2017, a minimum of 15 airports in Xinjiang have undergone upgrades, 7 of which are dual-use or military. Hotan, located 240 kilometers from the Indian frontier, is one example. A new runway, supplementary fortifications, and an expanded air defense complex have been implemented. Since 2019, 3 new airports, including Tashqorgan, have been under construction in Xinjiang, near the border crossings with Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. Nevertheless, Xi's explained, the PLA confronts a number of significant disadvantages compared to India, despite the military benefits that China's investments in the region have generated. Most of the Chinese frontier is located along the Tibetan Plateau, an elevated region frequently referred to as the roof of the world due to its lofty stature. 20 airports and heliports in Xinjiang and Tibet are situated at an elevation exceeding 3,000 meters above sea level. The PLA faces enormous operational challenges at such altitudes. Thin air impairs aircraft takeoff performance, necessitating the construction of longer runways. Consequently, aircraft may be unable to carry their maximum quantities of fuel, weapons, or cargo. In addition, severe and frigid weather presents its own set of difficulties. According to official Chinese data, the length of Tibet's highway network increased by 51% between 2015 and 2020, reaching 11,820 kilometers. During the same time frame, the highway network in Xinjiang expanded from 17,830 kilometers to 20,920 kilometers. In addition to contributing to economic growth, these highways facilitate the movement of supplies for the PLA. For example, construction is underway on at least 8 roads extending from the G219 highway to the Indian border. They could be utilized by the PLA, for instance, to rapidly reposition forces in the event of another Galwan Valley confrontation. Another new road, finished in 2021 and will reduce travel time by 8 hours, links Ningxi with Medog County in eastern Tibet. The fact that the PLA's 52nd and 53rd Combined Light Infantry Brigades have their headquarters in Ningxi demonstrates the criticality of such new routes in the PLA's effort to expand its influence. The rail network in Xinjiang has also expanded rapidly, from 5,900 kilometers in 2015 to 7,800 in 2020. New railway lines facilitate the connection between airports and military bases. However, the topography of Tibet makes the construction of new railways extremely challenging, and the region has only 800 kilometers of tracks. However, shortly after the inaugural operation of the first high-speed railway connecting Lhasa and Ningxi in 2021, PLA personnel were transported to an exercise area. The successful implementation of China's salami-slicing strategies in the South China Sea also provides a dependable indication of the country's behavior in other border regions. Bhutan is one victim of Beijing's years-long use of such tactics against the government. China then attempted to negotiate the formalization of its land take, but this intimidation has negatively impacted bilateral negotiations. China asserts sovereignty over 650 square kilometers of the Sokdang Wildlife Sanctuary in the east, 495 square kilometers of the Holy Buddhist region of the Bail Khenpajang in the north, and 269 square kilometers of Bhutanese territory and Doklam to the west. China has infringed on the Bhutan frontier, which has expeditiously established settlements, including Gyalapug village. According to Sudha Ramachandran, a writer for the Jamestown Foundation think tank in the United States, Beijing seems to be significantly modifying the existing conditions along its border with Bhutan. The rapid construction of townships by the People's Republic of China, PRC, along a river valley in Bail Khenpajang, situated on territory it asserts in north-central Bhutan, has been exposed in recent satellite imagery. The settlement comprises over 200 buildings, encompassing communication facilities, roadways, hydropower stations, and military and security outposts constructed within the last 10 years. The challenging terrain for entry from the Bhutanese side further compounds China's limited opposition from Bhutan. Both nations were supposed to refrain from taking any unilateral action to alter the status quo of the boundary in accordance with the 1998 agreement. Still, Chinese words are as worthless as the paper they are written on. The PLA is especially interested in the Doklam Tri-Junction border because achieving military superiority in that region would strengthen China's stance vis-à-vis India. The reasoning behind Beijing's land grab is not entirely clear, stated Ramachandran. In contrast to Doklam, an area near India that has also witnessed the People's Republic of China's efforts to modify the situation through the establishment of roads and bunkers, strategic dominion over Bail Khenpajang would be devoid of significance in the context of an India-China conflict. Concurrently with its infrastructure building efforts to alter the status quo in Bhutan in its favor, China is eager to expand its economic and other influence in the country. The PRC could increase its leverage and simultaneously foster a more favorable environment. Concerning China's ludicrous maritime territorial assertions and aggressive behavior at sea, government-run media outlets and state-sanctioned channels are disseminating ever more absurd information. As an illustration, on January 27, the Global Times tabloid tweeted that the China Coast Guard, CCG, had expelled Japanese vessels from the vicinity of the Diaoyu/Senkaku Islands, which are an intrinsic part of Chinese territory and where CCG vessels operate by the law to protect maritime rights and enforce the law in waters under Chinese jurisdiction. We strongly urge the Japanese side to cease all illicit activities in this area immediately and take necessary measures to prevent the recurrence of similar incidents. These assertions are constructs of China's imagination. Additionally, Beijing has effectively provoked the Philippines, resulting in Manila intensifying its denunciation of overt Chinese meddling. After Manila announced its intention to modernize military facilities in Batanes, the northernmost province of China, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Wang Wenbin, cautioned the Philippines to exercise caution and avoid experimenting with fire. On 10 February, a press release from the Philippine Department of National Defense issued a stern warning to China. The Defense Department emphasizes that Batanes is Philippine territory, and China has no authority to issue a notification to the Philippines regarding its actions within its borders. The Philippine people regard China's lack of credibility primarily as a result of its statements and actions. China should abstain from provocative discourse and activities if it genuinely desires to establish the global confidence and esteem it has been vainly endeavoring to acquire. The encroachment of China has engendered increasing animosity from nations such as the Philippines and Japan. Furthermore, in mid-2020, China's strategic maneuver against India in eastern Ladakh in 2020 incited Indian indignation. Ladakh has not seen China return to the status quo as of April 2020, notwithstanding extensive negotiations and the withdrawal of personnel from areas of contention. Chinese salami slicing operates in the same manner that the PLA dismantled strategic buffer zones, primarily on Indian soil, thereby depriving Delhi of authority over regions it had previously patrolled. Once the PLA establishes a foothold, any attempt to eradicate it becomes futile. Following the Eastern Ladakh conflict, China and India exerted considerable effort to fortify their infrastructures. Presently, both nations in Ladakh maintain an approximate count of 50,000 personnel. Commencing construction in October 2021, the 300-meter-long bridge and new road span the strategically significant Pangong Lake, facilitating swift military movement along the lake's periphery and in the vicinity of the Line of Actual Control (LAC) regions. The construction of an even wider and more spacious bridge commenced in 2022, enabling the passage of armored vehicles. During a conflict, bridges are at risk, nevertheless, they serve as a critical logistical asset for the People's Liberation Army, PLA, in other circumstances. 6 kilometers from the LAC, the PLA reportedly established a permanent divisional-level garrison and headquarters to the west of these bridges. Permanently established by mid-2020, the camp continued to grow throughout 2021. In addition to refinements and an entire company's fleet of armored vehicles, shelters appear to house artillery and anti-aircraft systems. It connects the forces stationed at Pangong to the headquarters of the Western Theater Command. A second radome was erected on a mountain peak north of the lake, approximately 6 kilometers from the headquarters, beginning construction in August 2021. These construction endeavors demonstrate that China is not contemplating a retreat, on the contrary, it is strengthening its position. The Indo-Pacific Security Program of the Center for a New American Security concluded in a report published last year, although the Chinese and Indian militaries have withdrawn forces from the tensest standoff sites where the 2020 build-up took place and established temporary buffer zones, both sides continue to station large numbers of troops forward along the disputed border, and there are several flashpoints where another border crisis could erupt at any moment. Given the ongoing developments in infrastructure development and the introduction of cutting-edge weapon systems by both China and India along the contested border, proactive deployments and increased erosion of trust, the likelihood of protracted standoffs that may escalate into regional or even global hostilities persists significantly. The same holds in all areas where China openly employs coercive or covert means to advance its agenda. Should the victims fail to defend themselves assertively, China will be further incentivized to persist in its unlawful endeavors to expand its territory. While Xi was partially correct in stating that China has never taken an inch of land from other countries, the country has contributed hundreds of square miles to the exterior.